Community Heart Media. Your voice, your heart, your opportunity. Welcome to tonight's show. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. So, welcome to 2022. And what a year it has been already. Julio, I don't know about you, but tell me, anything different for you this year?
Finally, we got a little bit of freedom, a little bit of going around the city and visiting beaches and getting out and about and restaurants. I missed the restaurant scene, so back at it again. So that's one great thing. Yes. So yes,
Restaurants,
bit
and
of
talk to me
freedom.
about the beaches and the freedom. Talk to me a bit about that. What's that
Oh
been
yeah.
like for you?
So probably half the listeners don't understand, but I like doing photography. So to me, beaches and sunsets are my expertise of trying to get out there and capture as much as possible. So that's been my highlight so far of this start of the year. So a bit more freedom, bit more relaxed, nice hot weather. So it's been great. Yes.
That sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, and so for myself, wow, it's been, and I'm going to touch on this a bit later, and once we introduce our guest, it's been a year that I may have never experienced before in my life. So I'm not going to touch on that much further until we start talking. But I'd like to introduce Cheryne. Cheryne, I'm just going to say, introduce yourself. Talk to us about who you are and where you're from, and yeah, a bit about in brief synopsis, a 30-second grab of who you are and why you're here tonight.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, and it's really a pleasure to be here again with you guys. I love Community Heart Radio, and love being with Julio and with Mark and with Paul in the past. So I'm Cheryne Blom, and as the title on the bottom says, I'm author of The Courage to Be You. I'm also program manager at Stride Education, and also a life coach that focuses on self-empowerment. And so, I was speaking with the guys, and we thought it'd be a great way to kick off 2022 and talk about all things self-love and how we can really implement that into 2022.
Great.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to enter 2022. Yeah, thank you so much for your introduction. And wow, where do we start? And first of all, I just want to encourage all our listeners listening live on Facebook to feel free to post any chats on Facebook. There any questions that you have for myself or Mark when he joins us in the studio, or Julio, our producer,
and
Cheryne.
got one, Belinda.
And we've already got, and thanks, Belinda. It's great to be back. Our last time we were on air was just before Christmas. We were broadcasting live just outside Flinders Station, and it was, a learning and also an experience. So
it was.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to bring Mark on board, and he's just come into the studio. So I'll bring Mark, and you can introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry we're late tonight. We've got a few technical problems over here in Northwest FM 98.9. But it's really good to start the year. And Shireen, lovely to see you here as our first guest of the year. Kelly, good to see you. And Julio, I hope this is all coming out okay. Haven't been here for a while, the studio. We've had the old summer blues, Julio, and we're back in action, eh?
Yes, we have. Yeah, so I think everybody's had technical issues. I had a fair few of them myself the other day and try and get my microphone to work for a while there. So I don't think anything wants to start after a while. So here we are.
Here we are. That's right. And Kelly, how are you going?
I'm good. We were just touching on how 2022 has been different, and I'm going to touch on mine as we're talking with Cheryne. Very different start than I can imagine, but as many Melburnians will be experiencing as well.
And Shireen, so good to see you. The courage, the courage to be you. Hey, that's you're an author. It's just so good to have you here. And the courage to be you is that's probably something that we all need to be reminded about as we start 2022. Would you say?
I think so. I think we talk about this often, how we've just kind of defaulted to stay in our comfort zones and to do as human beings, the path of least resistance and the path of least effort, and do what we kind of know. so, how we can challenge ourselves to have the courage, and to have the courage to be you means the courage to live authentically, and something that is a design in the making, and something that I think the last couple of years have really highlighted for us.
Yeah, well, it's very early on. It doesn't feel like February to me. It feels like January, but we are in February, and the 1 month's already gone, Julio. So you've got 11 months to work on your life now, and that's why I thought it was good having Shireen here, because I think she's got a lot of great things to say to a bloke like you as you start your year.
Yeah, I've noticed the theme's back on again. Back on to Julio. What can we fix on Julio this year? So.
We've got a long list, mate. We didn't get through the list last year, so there's a few items still on the list to work
That's
through.
True.
And Shireen, is it just a great way to start for you?
It's a great look. I think that, like I said before, I think the last couple of years have highlighted a lot and been, we've really been challenged all around the world, everybody experiencing, everybody in their own unique way. And, it's been a time for an opportunity for reflection, a time for us to look at our lives, look deeply in our lives, and especially when everything stopped in lockdown and, our usual distractions and things that busy our lives were no longer there. It was a really time that, to face ourselves and our lives and look at what really matters, look at what's working, look at what's not working, and, learn how to really design our lives the way that we want it. And I think that's really an art, and it's really a struggle for most of us.
Yeah. Kel, so what are your thoughts as you're starting this year?
Well, yeah, I think it's a perfect topic to be touching on, Cheryne. For many of us, and I was actually speaking about this with a colleague today and with a manager, because I think, like you said, upon reflection, this, especially for us here in Melbourne, but now, we're seeing across the world, the impact of COVID. But over the holiday period, I sort of had that chance to really refine on, and through at the moment as well, which I'll touch on shortly, why it's been different. But what's been different over those 2 years that we haven't recognised as well, we haven't observed, we haven't reflected on. And I guess just it's impacted us in many ways that we didn't even realise.
Yeah, for sure. So, Shireen, why don't we get some foundations here out the way in terms of, like, we're starting off the year. What's your advice for all of us as we get going? What are some of the things that you're doing yourself, it's happening in your life, that you'd like to share with us as we get going? What are some of the things we should be doing over the next few weeks as we build that foundation for 2022?
Well, I think that this time that we're living in, it's been an opportunity to kind of press reset. And this is where the courage comes in. It's like we can look at the drama of situations, and we can look at everything that we've lost in brackets and all, everything that's gone wrong. But it's also a type of a reset where we can really, really start to look at, how we can fine tune ourselves. And, myself over the break, I took some really great time off and got into nature. I was actually in the Grampians. And, I think that's when, like, the effects of lockdown really hit me, because I was like, how much I enjoy being in nature and how much it nurtures me and inspires me and connects me back to my creativity and enthusiasm and all those things that really make me healthy. It reminded me how important that was. And I started to really think about, how can I move forward into this year and, think about how I can control the controllables, if we want to call it that way, of what is in my sphere of control, what can I let go of, and how can I start to eliminate the things that were really causing me stress. And by that, I kind of mean internally, right? Because the outside, sometimes we don't have control over, but our perceptions of the world and the way that we go through situations, that's in our control. And so learning how we can shift our mindset about things, and how we can take a step back and learn how to I actually read something so beautiful the other day that I did want to share today. And I was reminded of Walden, the book Walden, that was written in like 1845 by Henry Thoreau. And he writes in the book, he goes to take like 2 years and goes to stay in this lake, and he builds this house. And there's a line in the book where he says, I went to the lake to learn to live deliberately. And that line really hit me, because I thought, how many of us actually live deliberately? And, that's where I started to really reflect and think to myself, deliberately is kind of what I'm talking about, authentically and with purpose and with meaning and feeling and getting rid of all the stuff that weighs us down. And yeah, so that's a big mouthful that I can unpack a bit more, but in essence,
I'm just going to say, Cheryne, unpack that for us further. Like for myself, I'm naturally an extroverted social person, and right now I'm having to slow down. My manager was saying, Cal, your normal operational is at 150%. Having recently had COVID, and I've gone down to that 20%. And so it's given me that time to really sit and think, what is it? What's been driving me? What's been those outside influences and that internal? So when you're saying deliberately, talk us through that for many of us, different environments and different circumstances.
I think that a lot of the time we don't realize that we are coming from a place of fear. And we don't realize it because it is so deeply subconscious, and we are so deeply programmed by the world around us. Like the dominant narration is a narration that is fear-based. And so internally, we have these drivers, these ego drivers that actually don't honor what our true self and our soul and our essence, how we really want to live. We live how we should live, or according to these terms. And so we don't realize that this inner conflict is happening. And we live in this, I've heard it explained once, the gotta mind. I've got to wake up and I've got to do this and we live in a sense of urgency, and we live in a sense of rush and panic and trying to meet deadlines and achievements and goals, but we're trying to meet ego goals that are based on ego investments. And so I think sometimes when I look at the opportunity of a reset now, I think this is amazing for us to look at this egoic existence and to be able to say, can we start to gain awareness around that fear? Can we start to gain awareness around what's really driving me? And that's the depth that we need to go to, is really looking within and say, what is actually motivating my behavior, which is the basis of psychology, right? Does that make sense?
Now, I think we're going to have to get into this a little bit, Shireen, because I think you're talking up here, and we just got to come down to us normal people. Let's just take Julio.
Fear and awareness.
Yeah, we got Julio here as our example. Now, Julio's a busy man. Now, are you saying that everything Julio does is based on his ego? How does Julio decide what he's going to do, what he's not going to do? I mean, he's got to do everything I ask him to do. That's clear, but
that's my ego.
That's his, how do we navigate this?
This is our friendship.
Well, I think when I say that, let me just clarify. I don't think it's everything that we do is not based on fear, right? And it is very, very hard sometimes to do this work and decipher, what is it that I really want and what is it? But I think the best way to look at this is to look for the situations that are causing you stress, right? Because I think there's always this duality happening. You know what I mean? We're not separate from this duality. What I mean by the duality is that there is our kind of more higher self working and lower self working all at the same time. And so, it's, and
so
a lot
shall we
of
use an example? What's an example? And Mark, I'm going to put you at the forefront at the moment. Can we work with Mark? What's something that is is fearful with him at the moment, and talk us through this year and what you may have observed as well.
Yes. Now, Shireen, you know me very well. What am I doing that's fearful? Don't get into my ego.
I've got a list here. I've got a massive list. Do you want to start writing?
I can't think of one thing.
Yeah, go. Yes.
Well, let's take finances. It is the basis of most of our stress, right?
Yes.
So now that there's obviously a real factor in that, in the sense that, you know, we have to eat, and we have to pay bills, and we have to, you know, meet all our KPIs and everything. But when we go deeper into it and start to understand, like, what is it about the fear that is really, what is it about the finances that we really fear? And I think that what this involves, it involves peeling away layers. So I like to, you know, that line in Shrek where he says, you know, ogres are like onions. I think all human beings are like onions as well. Not that we're all ogres, but we're like ogres. And I think that sometimes when we don't understand the depth of our consciousness and the depth of our emotional being, and so what we fear on the outside is not the same of what's really at the core fear. So we have to peel away layers to get to that core.
So would you say, Sharon, the first thing would be identifying, taking that first step would be identifying what is that fear?
Yeah.
So like you said, many, like for Mark, I'm just speaking as an example here, maybe finances. Fear maybe for many Melburnians, well, we're going to say the obvious, I'm just going to put on the table, getting COVID, for example, catching it, or the environment we're around. Fear may be for many relationships. Am I going too deep here, Mark?
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, some of these fears are real, though, aren't they? I mean, they're real fears of getting COVID.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here by myself. You guys aren't here because we don't want to get COVID from each other. So that's a real fear, Shireen. So that's an okay fear to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I suppose, how we process that fear. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that, you know, it's based on what meaning we're making. So, for example, if I'm going to catastrophize things, right, and really dramatize it and get swept up in the collective fear, then I'm going to be a nervous wreck, and I'm going to be anxious about it, and my mind's focus is going to be, well, what if this happens, and what if that happens? And, you know, my mind's going to be anticipating, it's going to be catastrophizing, it's going to be dramatizing a situation. And so because my mind is focusing on all that negativity and drama, and that because my perception is one of catastrophizing, it's going to make me highly anxious, right? As opposed to if I shift that perception a little bit and I shift my inner dialogue to say, okay, I'm going to be okay. Like, whatever happens, we'll manage it in the moment. And I'm just going to focus on what I can do, how I can take care of myself, and we'll move through it. So you can see that completely different narration came from a different perception, a different story.
Yeah, but I think what happens there, you actually got into it. You actually realized that you were there, so you can make some actions. A lot of people that get into these things don't actually know they're in it. You know, they don't know they're not being rational. They don't realize they're making a bigger issue of the issue. Because some people, like myself, I'm pretty easygoing with the whole COVID stuff, right? It's not that I don't want to wear masks. It's not that I don't want to isolate. But, you know, I'm not sitting in my room with my door shut. And there's some people that are sitting in their room with door shut. That's extremes, right? And there's people in between. So, you know, people don't realize that. And we don't want to judge people. But how do they get some insights, or how do we help people navigate that? I mean, it's pretty difficult.
Well, I think that you know, this comes from a premise of understanding and a decision, a self-decision to say, I am 100% responsible for the way that I'm perceiving the world. And so I think that that's the first step, is that when we remove ourselves of being the victim to our world, or thinking that we are in the effect of the causes of our lives. And when we realize that actually my life is made up of how I am perceiving, in every single moment I perceive something and I make a decision. And so empowerment happens when we realize that we are in control of that inner story. And I think that for so many people, yes, that inner inquiry and that ability to stop and realize this is an internal story, and to learn how to separate what's happening outside of us from what's happening within us. And
so how does someone take that step back, Shireen? Like, how does someone first acknowledge that and recognize it and take a step back? Because I know for many people, and I'm keen to hear from our listeners as well, their first step may be, how do I do that? They're not even acknowledge. They may be, for many, in that high cortisol level, where that's what
Yes.
they used to, and
Yes.
that you're in that environment, and that's their perception. Or
Yes.
others, which I'm speaking about with my colleague today, where you're working from home and you're in that isolation. So you don't have a lot of verbal connection or face-to-face connection. And that's a big, big point of difference. Digital, face-to-face interaction, a loss of a sense of community, which can elevate those cortisols as well. And you lose that connection.
Exactly.
And so,
yeah.
do you see what I mean? And so
Yeah.
for many of us, we're unrecognizing the impact that's had on us for now, coming up to the third year here in Melbourne, across in the UK and Europe too. And so these learned behaviours, we've got to almost unlearn or now put in place these new strategies, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I think that for some people that, it's not going to come natural, the self-inquiry, because we are so used to leaning into our outside world for validation and for support. And we're not conditioned, we're not trained to lean inwards and to really start to self-inquire. And I think that if for people that do find that difficult, there's so many support systems, even in isolation, that you can call and connect with a counselor or a therapist or somebody to talk to actually work your way through it. So I think that's one thing. Another way, and I know for me, because I am a very big internalizer, and so like self-inquiry for me, like that's the first place that I go into is, and I suppose it also comes with learning and conditioning yourself to do that. And so one of the best ways also to do that is to learn how to journal, and to sometimes use that, especially in isolation, to write out, and just to be able to write out, what am I feeling right now? Right. And so not to go one level, but go about 6 to 10 feelings in, because as you start to get deeper in, you start to actually get to the truth, right? You actually start to get to what's really upsetting you, what really is at the core here for you, and so being able to kind of go to that depth allows us to start to really come to the inner of what's really, really going on for us.
Well, look, we're getting pretty deep here, which is fantastic. Don't forget you're on 98.9 Northwest FM. You can make a comment about this. If you can understand what's going on, make a comment. If you can't understand what's going on, make a comment. But Ammo has given us a comment here, and he's a deep sort of bloke. One of the greatest fears is that we fear what people think of us. Now, that's true. If we learn not to care about what people think, we can be more true to ourselves and be the real you. Now, that's a pretty insightful comment from our good friend Ammo.
Thank you, Ammo. I love that. Oh, look, I love that. And I must say that foundation, that thought is very much a foundation of my book. And what I wrote in the book. And, I think that when we start to get, like, my book is actually about the two sides of ourselves. So in the book, I kind of say we have our ego self and we have our essence. And so part of the awareness process is realizing what belongs to the ego and what belongs to my essence, my true self. And like what Emma just said there is, the ego, when we start, and the ego is just part of this human consciousness and something that we develop very, very young in our development. But it's, that idea that I'm not, the ego, like what I said in the book, has 3 beliefs of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. And so what we don't realize is a lot of our fears come from that. So like what Emma was just saying there about, I'm worried about what people think about me. So that what we can see, if we kind of look behind that or under the layers of that, it's coming from that I don't feel I'm good enough, so I'm worried what people think of me. And so that focus and that driver is going to create fear.
Yep. Okay.
And it is one of the biggest fears that we see. And it's actually one of the core things that we talk about in our school programs that we do.
So, Sharon, I love that tool that you mentioned, where a person can choose to write that down, to journal and to say what. And do you think that's really connecting with the head and the heart space? I've heard a lot about that too, of really feeling what's your heart saying to you compared to your head. And
I love that you said that. I love that you said that. I love that you said that, Kelly, because like the language of what I was saying for myself for 2022 is that it's now time to listen to your heart. That actually was my goal for 2022 on that particular language. And it's very, very, like sometimes I think when we're stressed, the mind and heart, it's like if you take oil and vinegar and you shake it together and it all mixes up and it's all confusing.
Yes.
And then when you let it all settle, it separates again, right? So when we're going through something, we get so muddled up. What does my head say? What does my heart say? Is it my heart?
Yeah.
Is it my head? And it's when we're all flustered like that, we actually cannot determine. We need to get still and get calm and let the clarity come, right?
So for someone like myself, I'll use myself as an example. There you go, Mark, Julio. I'm putting myself forward. And for many people who work a lot in this online digital space, have been in this COVID situation and environment, how do you separate that? Or you're so used to checking your phone, being on the emails, you're just used to, like my English at the moment, excuse me, used to being in that mechanism. And I know I can speak for Mark too. He's very much like myself too. How do we then differentiate?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that this is
he's laughing. He's like, you know me too well.
It really, really starts with creating a space for yourself. And, whether it's, going like for me, going up to the Grampians and having that quietness and being around nature and the, majestic landscape that I was around, it just was a platform for me to do some deep self-inquiry. But again, we're not always able, especially in isolation, we're not going to go and do, but I always say, like, again, we can create this atmosphere in our mind, right? So it is actually creating a space and a decision within yourself to say, I'm leaning in and I want to get to know myself more, right? I want to understand myself more, and I'm going to open up a very authentic, genuine, and vulnerable conversation with myself.
Okay. The thing I wouldn't mind asking you, Shireen, and we're going to hear from Paul in a second. We've got another message here, but when you decide to talk to yourself, when you decide to talk to your good friend Mark, and when you decide to talk to your partner, like if you go too internal, then I'm your friend, I know nothing about what's going on, or I'm your partner and you're not talking to me. Well, how do you balance all those 3 sort of audiences, if you like?
I think this is where the courage comes in, is that I think that when we really start to understand ourselves and then communicate that to our closest people, that's when, they start to see our genuine selves and start to really understand us. You know what I mean? So that's where the vulnerability comes in, and the ability to say, well, now I'm understanding myself. I'm understanding what I really want. And so, just coming back to like Kelly's question and Mark, that it kind of coincides with yours. I think when you create that space for yourself and then asking your heart, really sitting within that space of your truth and saying, what is it that I really want? If fear was not a problem, if money was not a problem, if there were no obstacles, what is it that I really want? What is it that will really make me happy? What is it that's going to make me feel calm? What is going to make me feel like life is fulfilled? Right.
Yeah.
And when we start to answer those questions and say, what is it that my heart really, really wants, which is usually quite a simple thing. It's not as complex as the head makes it. Then when we start to hear those answers, that's when we can start to really communicate that to the people closest to us. And we start to align our lives and align our relationships with what what the heart's deeply desiring.
Okay, well, look, we're getting a bit of questions on the chat, but look, after the 30-minute break, we're going to go to a break in a minute. Julio's got something he's going to play for us. But after we come back, we're going to have the 5 steps to happiness in 2022. So this is going to be Shireen's 5 steps to happiness in 2022. So if we all follow her 5 steps, we're all going to be happy, and that's great news for Julio.
There's also the tools too, Mark.
The tools, whatever Shireen wants to say, the 5 steps, 5 tools, whatever it is. Paul's got something to say, Julio.
Yes, he has. So we got Paul here.
Paul's good. Yep, just keep your messages coming, guys. How do we manage our thoughts or avoid negative thoughts, especially during COVID isolation times? That's a good question by Paul. Thanks, mate. Shireen, what would you say to Paul? How do we manage our thoughts or avoid negative thoughts, especially during COVID?
So I love that question. And avoiding negative thoughts. It's kind of like avoiding negative thoughts is kind of like sneezing with your eyes open. They're going to come in, right? But what we want to actually be able to do is learn the ability to practice mindfulness. And so what that means is learn to have the ability to be observant of our thoughts, recognize our thought, recognize that is a negative thought, or what we can call automatic negative thoughts, or what we like to call ants. Right? Recognize that that's an ant, and recognize that you have a choice to believe that story or find a different perspective. And that's where the power comes in, that ability to slow down, recognizing the thought, and then recognizing that you have the power to believe that thought or think if there's another way that you can see the situation, because in every situation, there's multiple perspectives, not just one.
Well, I think we're going to start charging soon, because 98.9 Northwest FM Community Heart is solving people's problems. And you want to make a donation to Big Brothers Big Sisters for all the great advice you're getting tonight, feel free to do that. But Ammo's come back again with another great little statement here, Julio.
Yes, let me bring it up. Ammo, sorry, I'm a bit lost here. Ammo, yes.
Yes, Ammo. Well, G. Carroll, I think this is one for you. Why don't you read out what Ammo's talking to us about?
Thanks everyone for putting those comments in, and keep them coming, I might say, because I'm loving this. Fear is also the biggest inhibitor for innovation. Therefore, as leaders, we must learn to create safe working environments where people feel safe to speak up, share ideas, challenge the status quo without fear of repercussion or being dismissed or put down. Great question, Ammo, and I'm going to counteract that with as well. That's one A question. 1B question, Cheryne, and have a think about this as we go into this break. How do we do this working from home and leading back into the office? Food for thought there.
Yeah.
Good. And while Shireen's thinking about all this, we've got another comment here.
I told you, Cheryne, I'll get the audience talking.
I know.
It's great conversations there.
Yeah. Yvonne, mate, we've got all these new listeners tonight. It's great. There are many benefits of self-questioning. We learn to be introspective and becoming emotionally unstuck, and the ability to look inside yourself in a non-judgmental way. Oh, that's good. You don't want to, because that's what some people do, I suppose. They start judging themselves and getting down on themselves, Shireen.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the points that I wanted to talk about, of that idea of self-compassion, right? And self-acknowledgement, which is, again, what the heart would tell you. right? Learning to listen to the difference between them.
True, very
so
true.
it sounds as though my point that I touched on earlier about the head and the heart, would you be saying, Sharon, that's something that ties in with a lot of these questions that Paul and Amo and Von have asked? Would you say that's one point to be walking away with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ability to know, like if we think of it this way, the subconscious mind takes in 2 million bits of information every second. Okay, so that's our sensory expression on our senses are taking all that stimulus in, and we have these mental filters that decide on what we're actually viewing the world, what our reality is, right? So that ability to be able to recognize what you're taking on and recognizing that the mind is creating a story, but sometimes that story is an illusion because it's based on our perception. So when we start to realize that my mind is a story that I'm creating, is it actually real? Is it true? We have to challenge those thoughts. We have to think critically about those thoughts. Critical thinking is the most important tool to gain along this way. Without critical thinking, you can't do this.
No.
Okay, now, Shireen, we're going to an ad break, and we don't have an ad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to do an ad. I'm just going to get off studio for a few minutes. While we're doing this, have a little break. I want you to talk about what Stride Education does, because you work for Stride Education, and Julio's going to put you predominantly on the screen, and we're just going to go off screen, and you're going to be our little ad. So I want you to talk about what Stride does for a few minutes, and Julio's going to take us all off screen and just put you there.
Yep.
And we're going to go back into the studio for a minute. But I'll just give you a 2 or 3 minutes on Stride Education. Thanks very much, Shireen, and we'll be coming back in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Of Stride Education, and I'm really passionate about my role as program manager, and really passionate about the programs that we run, because they're very practical programs that really help students and teachers implement tools right away, get up and change themselves and their lives right away. Stride Education has actually been in business for, I think, just close to 30 or so years. And we originally started with peer support programs, and we're known very much for peer support. And peer support is still a very big program, an important program that we run. And throughout the years, with the schools that we've worked at, we've really developed and built a large suite of programs. But our programs are predominantly focused around social and emotional learning. And they really fill the gaps of learning in schools, and what we would like to think of really allow and deepen that idea of respectful relationships and how to create safe schools. That social emotional learning that helps us learn that deeper self-awareness of who am I, how do I function, how does my mind work, how do my emotions work, how do I regulate and manage myself, how do I build healthy relationships and make responsible decisions and build social connections. And our programs really focus around tools on how to do that and develop emotional intelligence, develop the soft skills that are needed not only to build healthy relationships, but really thrive in the workplace. So we have programs like our traditional peer support or peer mediation that really help students build a role or a functional role in the school. And then we have our supportive friends programs, and that really help build those relationships. And, at Stride, we like to see that relationships and healthy relationships are at the cornerstone of well-being. So when we're treating each other well, when we're treating ourselves well, when we're learning how to have greater empathy, when we're learning how to be kinder, when we're starting to learn how to realize that how my behavior, my actions, what I say to another person, how they deeply impact another person, that we can start to have great awareness of how we can control ourselves and how we can choose to be kinder and more gentle towards each other. And I think that's really, really important as we return to school now and return from a couple difficult years where a lot of students have lost that social connection and that ability on how to sit in a classroom and socialize. We've had a lot of influence from social media, from, TV programs that, portray sometimes a kind of more toxic environment or dramatic environment that a lot of students start to imitate. And so, to have programs that allow students that really start to think about what kind of person they are being and what kind of person they are choosing to be, and how we can be kinder towards each other and really start to understand each other more. We really believe that by helping students develop those tools, we will create safer schools where there are respectful relationships. And I think in an environment like that, students will re-engage with the curriculum, re-engage with schools, feel happier and safer, and less judged, less worried about coming to school. And then school can be really a platform for students to thrive in their lives and a springboard to start their lives as an adult. And I think part of what we really want to create with our programs as well is that sense of community where there's close relationships between teachers and students, and that teachers are feeling a sense of purpose, and they feel well in themselves, and they feel connected to a purpose, and we have a broader community supporting them as well, a community where parents are more engaged and connected with their children, and the village and the community in the school really builds, and everybody can be on the same page. So I think that we now have this environment where we can really learn this and develop these skills moving forward.
Great, Shireen. That's
over an hour.
Great, Shireen. It's great to hear about Stride Education, and thanks for giving that little break here thing. But look, we're just going to come back in the show. We've got sort of on the run home now, but we've got another comment, Julio, from Paul, and we've had a few good comments. Yep. How do we develop critical thinking skill, especially in the current world where we don't have to complete facts, which is an interesting one. So
really good comment, Paul. Really good comment.
Yep.
I love that idea, and I think that when we start to realize that, I love the idea of like the mind creating these illusions, right? And that we're always making up a story. And so a story can be anything that we want it to be, right? So, and so what is fact and what is objectivity? It really, when we start to kind of think deeply into this, it's kind of like the black hole. There's no end to it, right? So I think that to develop that critical thinking is to really start to, it requires a deep self-connection to be able to think of what are all the ways that I can see this, and how do each of those ways make me feel, right? Because when
would you say, Shireen, from and I'm going to speak from a woman's point of view and a man's point of view here, because I know men can be very critical and women can be emotional. Correct me if I'm wrong. So with Paul, what he's mentioned here, to create that critical thinking, would you say for men and for a woman, we need to look at the opportunities and to develop those and to start writing those down objectively and strategically too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is very much like the emotion is still important, right? It's still so that ability to connect and say, how does it make me feel, generally will come easier for a person that connects more emotionally rather than through logic, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we again, it's that head and heart. We need both to function, right? Mm-hmm. So it is that ability to kind of write down all the facts and evidence. And, I think that that's also a really good way to speak to the mind and to the negative thoughts, is to really, really collect the evidence that supports that or doesn't support that.
And would you say if someone, like as Paul's mentioned, with the fact, do you think the outsider influences have been such things as social media, media out there, and to remove yourself from those? Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
To develop that critical thinking and remove yourself those outside environments.
Absolutely. And part of that critical thinking is digital literacy, right? Because, and what that means is we really need to think about it, like when we're teaching the students this digital literacy, we talk about it where we say, you really have to look at where's the source coming, why are they writing this, what are they actually trying to say, and so not just taking things for face values, right? And it's very, very important to become aware of how social media is affecting you. So I guess in essence, what I'm talking about is around mindfulness, right? The ability to really, really be aware of how things are making you feel. Because even I sometimes will jump on social media and I'll hear my head, right? I'll hear the thoughts going, oh, I wish I was there, or they have this life and they are, and instantly all those thoughts come up, and then I have to stop and say, hold on a minute, like, you've got so much to be grateful for, and you're, just don't even go down that rabbit hole. We actually have to, again, catch ourselves in those thinking patterns and then really, really realize the damage and then bring ourselves back into reality.
Okay, I'm getting you back in reality. The reality is we've got 10 minutes to go. We've got a lot to cover. Von's come in and made another comment, Julio. So when expectations aren't met or you're emotionally wounded by an event, what advice can you give people so they don't go down that path of self-pity or even angry at yourself or others? This is a great little comment, Cheryne.
Yeah. So I think when expectations are not met, that's when, we kind of reach that, like we say we're wounded again, but when we lean into it and we understand, why am I wounded? If somebody's offended me, has it triggered my feeling of not feeling good enough? Right? And when we can become aware that this is me not feeling good enough, and again, when we have the power to challenge that thought and say, you know what, I don't have to believe that thought, because what are my strengths? What am I good at? What is my purpose? What do I really want to do? We don't have to go down that hole of self-pity, right? Because it's just a negative feedback loop trying to validate ourselves that we're not worthy or not good enough. And so it does require, again, that work to realize that, why am I really, really upset? What has really, really happened here? Right?
Hey, this is all good because it's coming into our top 5 ways to become happy in 2022. So a lot of people are waiting for that. But the other question we've got is, they all want a copy of your book, Shireen. Obviously, they want to give donations to Big Brothers, Big Sisters, but they also want a copy of your book. Where can they get your book from?
Well, if you kind of just go to my website, which is how my name's spelled up there, ShireenBlom.com, you can follow the link to my book there, or you can get it on Amazon or Booktopia, or any of those books. But yeah, Amazon's probably the easiest one where they can go and get it. So if you go into there and just put The Courage to Be You by Cheryne Blom, you will find it.
Brilliant.
Wow, it's fantastic. Now, look, we're just going to quickly get these 5 points down about finding happiness in 2022. What would be your first comment? And don't forget, if you're listening, you can write your comments about how you think you can find happiness in 2022. Just put a comment there.
Yeah, keep those comments coming. I have been loving having those comments come through, so please keep them coming. And anything that you're thinking that Shireen may have touched on, or that you want us to further clarify as well.
So what would be your first point?
My first point is a bit of a game changer. And like what Kelly was saying, this is about the habits. And my first point is going to be of creating a morning practice. And by morning practice, you don't need to go to the top of a mountain and meditate for an hour. This requires 5 to 10 minutes only. And the morning practice is about having a space of contemplation. So rather than getting out of bed and jumping into autopilot mode and just go, 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 and I got to do this and I got to do that, and you're in rush mode and the cortisol's going and the adrenaline's going and the nervous system's going, and by 3 o'clock we're gone. Having a space, 5-10 minutes every morning where you wake up and you are mindful, whether you're doing some breathing exercises, some stretching exercises, a perfect time to do some journaling, right? What is it that I consciously want to create today? What is my intention for the day? These are all things that you can do in that morning practice. Another morning practice, if you have the time to go for a walk or do some yoga or light, gentle breathing, or just have a space, your hour of power in the morning where it's just you, a place to contemplate on your thoughts. So that is the most powerful space, creating a morning practice. And like I said, it can be as little as 5 minutes a day.
Okay, well, just before we get to number 2, a couple of comments from Paul. Let's look at his first comment. Paul's first comment, Julio. Oh,
No, sorry.
You.
No.
Oh, that's it. This is
Paul's
Shireen's
got the link.
book. Paul's
Thank
on
you,
the sales. Paul's on the sales team. And,
Yep, there you go.
And what's the second comment? He's got another link to Shireen's book.
I know.
Well done, Paul. And we've got the new comment person, Lily. What's Lily got to say? So good. I've been doing morning practice for a while now, and the day is a million times better than when I do it. How's that, Lily? Fantastic. Julio, this is great for you, mate. Rather than you just snoring all morning, Julio, get up and actually do something.
All right. I'll remember that.
And what I encourage people to do is, this is all about habit formation. So, just say to yourself, you're going to do it for 7 days. Start 7 days and say, for 7 days, I am going to do this. I am going to spend 10 minutes every morning doing either meditation or journaling or some deep contemplation work, right? And then say, after the 7 days, let me do another 7. Let me take it to 3 weeks, right? And then take it to 4 weeks. And then slowly, that will start to become a habit.
You know what? These are so good. These tips are so good. We're going to go to 3 tips now because we won't need 5 because that's a million times better just on tip number 1. What's tip number 2?
Tip number 2 is slow down and mindfully slow down. And I would actually go to the point of saying, put this as a reminder in your phone, right? A couple times a day, have a little thing that goes on and says, stop and breathe, right? And also, rather than saying, oh, I need to meditate in the morning or meditate in the afternoon, slowing down means that you start to recognize when you go into that rush mode, start to recognize when you feel stressed, and just stop for a second and take a couple breaths. Now that takes 1 minute, right?
Okay, can you just take a breath for a minute? Kelly, what do you think about this one? Because this is a challenge for you and I, isn't it?
You. I would say you first and foremost, predominantly, especially at the moment. I'm going to challenge Mark on this next week. I guarantee. I'm going to say, has he done this or not? What do you think, Julio? Do you think?
I reckon it's a good idea.
Yeah, deal.
What has Sarah Brown got to say? Sarah Brown's got something to say as well.
She has.
Oh, mate, here we go. Sarah, I love the advice of the morning practice. On my work days, I take time to be thankful and just say a prayer to get my day started. Sounds fantastic. Makes a huge difference, and it's been a game changer. Mate, we might only need 1 tip. We've got 2 tips, though. We're going to do our morning thing. We've got to do our just slow down. And what's James has got to say? What's James saying here, Julio? 5 to 10 in the morning.
10 minutes morning.
I like that. I'll tell you what, I can't wait to hear tip number 3, our final tip as we start winding up the show.
Okay, tip number 3, I'm going to ask you to challenge your negative thoughts. And I have this game that I play with my coaching clients where I say, let's pretend we're taking your thoughts to court, right? So you take your negative thought to court, to a judge, and say, show me all the evidence to support that negative thought. And if there's no evidence, case dismissed. That thought has to be dismissed. And so this is the best way to start to disrupt the pattern, right? We want to disrupt the pattern of negative thinking. So we have to just stop and challenge the thought. Is that thought true? Is it absolutely true? If I took that to court, is there enough evidence to create a case on that thought?
Fantastic. Well, Julio, let's run through the top 3, mate. And we're happy to have another comment before we wind up the show. If you've got any comments about the tip number 1, 2, or 3, Julio, what have we got?
Okay, first, number 1, creating a morning practice.
Fantastic.
So that's me ringing Mark at 5 o'clock in the morning. Sounds good. I'll do that. Make sure I do that. Number 2, slow down, make a reminder, stop and breathe.
Very good. Very good.
And then challenge your negative thoughts.
Okay, now these are 3 great tips. I want everyone to be honest here, right? We're going to go round.
You just picked my brain. You know, am I going to ask you what you're going to do, and you're going to ask me? Yeah.
No. What we're going to do is, which one of those tips do we find the hardest? The morning activity, slowing down, or challenging our negative thoughts? Now, Shireen, I might go to you first. Actually, which one of those do you find the most challenging?
For me?
Yeah.
I think, well, I've learned how to challenge my negative thoughts, because now I just say, really? Did I just think that? Like, really? Am I going to? So that one now that was difficult for me once, but I practiced it for about 5 years and it's now laughable. I think the one that I have to practice is the slow down. That's my, again, stay connected to my heart.
What about you, Julio?
With Shireen, I'm a slow down person. I don't think the rest of them I find pretty small, easy. Like creating morning practice, I do that every single morning anyway. So, and challenging negative thoughts, I'm a things man. So I don't have any thoughts basically. I just make things happen. So, so slow down's my one.
All right, Cal, what about you?
You go first.
Well, I'm actually going to try and focus on these negative thoughts. Just try and be
I'm going to guess what yours is.
I'm going to try and be a bit more mindful. I'm going to try and be mindful and challenge these negative thoughts. I reckon that's a good one. The morning one, that's a challenge. Slowing down is a challenge. I'll have to get to them next year, but in 2022, I'm going to try and be a bit more mindful. That would be a good start. Yeah. Kelly, what about you?
I agree with that one, Mark, for you, definitely. I would say for me, it's all 3. And I'm going to be honest here, is that for me, slowing down, never heard of it. And that's a challenge for me at this current time, very much so. Those negative thoughts, I've been observing that's come up a lot more over these past 2 years. And I've got to keep reminding myself to not go down that. And I've identified that it's been because being in front of working from home and being in isolation. And I feed off being around people. That's me. And that morning, I'm a night person, always have been. So I do that at night before I go to bed. But it's breaking that up throughout the day. So that's
great. Hey, it's been a wonderful show. I tell you, thank you so much for all your messages. Great deep messages. I tell you, people have been listening and contributing.
Thanks, everyone.
Really great to have people there. It's fantastic. Julio, thanks for all your technology. Kel, always good to see you. And Shireen, just your final comment as we go about this year and how we can be ourselves.
I think with those tips, I think staying connected and not buying into collective stories. Stay with that self-awareness, stay connected to yourself, stay with what matters. And I think that comes with just simplifying things and just, it's almost like trying to do less rather than more. Do things well rather than trying to pile everything and rush, and try not to do things in that fear, autopilot, panic way. But everything that you do will be in quality. Everything that you do will be conscious. Everything that you do will have greater awareness.
Okay, no, that sounds great on that. My friend Amo reckons I don't know how to slow down, so I'm going to have to accept that challenge. I'm going to be mindful. I agree. I'm going to be mindful and slower. Slowing down. Not sure what that means. Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you, Carla.
I agree, Carla.
Well, I'll tell you this. Someday your body lets you know if you don't listen.
100%.
Well, look, we've run out of time. It's been a fantastic show. Thanks to our listeners and the great comments you've all made. Thanks, Julio. Thanks, Kelly, for being great host. And Shireen,
thanks, everyone.
Love you. It's great having a celebrity on the show to start us off 2022. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Tune in every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. or watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and follow us on LinkedIn and other social media.